Hey, Yinz guys and gals, gather round for a journey like no other. It's time to hop on board the Where Yinz Goin podcast. From the rivers that meet at the point to form downtown Pittsburgh, to the Great Salt Lake, to the furthest corners of the globe, Matt and Katie will be your compass, your confidants, your companions of that, as we explore the wonders of travel. So kick back, relax on your couch, and let the wanderlust wash over Yinz as we discover new horizons and reminisce about old favorites. With Matt and Katie by our side, the sky's the limit. Join Matt and Katie on the Where Yinz Goin podcast, because when it comes to travel, the journey's just getting started. And now, without further ado, let's give a shout for your guides through the highways and byways of travel, the planning partners, the travel tandem, Matt and Katie.
Hi, Yinz doing? Welcome to the Where Yinz Goin podcast. I'm Matt. I'm one of your hosts. Today, we're going to finish up our talk about visiting Gettysburg and touring the battlefield. Again, joining me are Tyler and Roger, our two Civil War reenactor friends, and hope you enjoy the last installment. And so the plan was that the South needed a victory on Northern soil. That they wanted Maryland, but Maryland was kind of neutral, that they wanted to secede, but with where Washington, D.C. is, it's between Maryland and Virginia. So
they tried to secede, and they were just kind of, all the politicians in Maryland were just captured by Lincoln.
Yeah, Lincoln said, yeah, well, you want to secede? No, you ain't. So yeah, it's kind of a tricky thing there. So the Confederates start moving north, and they're going through into Pennsylvania, and they're actually looking for shoes. And if you ever look at a map of Gettysburg, it's like a spider web of all these roads that all converge at Gettysburg. And that's kind of even something mentioned in the movie, that they're discussing things in Lee's tent, and he has a map, and he's talking about, I think it's at Long Street. He's like, I don't have my spectacles. What's that town's name? And it's Gettysburg. It's like, all right, let's go there. And at this time, Stuart, who is the cavalry general, and the cavalry is basically scouting. They want to know the terrain, where the troop movements, whatever. He's out joyriding through Pennsylvania, as we mentioned before, getting his name in the papers. He is causing some havoc. He's scaring
supply lines.
Yeah, disrupting supply lines. He's scaring the citizens. So he's making a psychological warfare event. He's doing something psychologically, but he's not really doing too much damage to the Union, and more importantly, he's not doing his job of scouting. So the Confederacy is going into this blind, basically. But on July 1st, as the Confederates come into Gettysburg, is that they eventually encounter Buford. So Buford's cavalry, they're on Seminary Ridge. And we have to be careful here, because there's a cemetery ridge and a seminary ridge. Cemetery Ridge has a cemetery. Seminary Ridge has a seminary. All right. So Buford ends up meeting Harry Heath, but Heath has orders not to engage the Union Army. But Buford's dismounted from his cavalry, and Heath just thinks that it's militia. And so they start getting some pop shots off each other. And who was the one who fired the first shot? Was that Buford?
Union guys. Yeah, part of the an Indiana cavalry regiment.
Wasn't there one guy who said, "Watch this, I'm gonna"?
He was like, "Hand me your rifle. I'm gonna kick this ball off." Yeah, and he took a shot. They believe it was at J.J. Pettigrew's troops were coming from Marsh Creek up, and this officer goes, "Hand me your rifle. I'm gonna kick this ball off," and fire the pop shot. Don't even hit anybody. No one knows. But and then when they heard this, Caleb's battery opened up. The Union gun, 4 guns of Union horse artillery was positioned, and they opened fire on the Confederates coming forward.
They have the original gun is there that fired the first artillery
shot. It has a
shot.
plaque one that says fired the first shot,
and it's right under Buford statue.
And so the Confederates, they have a lot more manpower, so they're bringing up, and they're starting to get an advantage. And Buford pulls back a little bit, but they have the wooden rail fences there and some rocks that they're piling up to get a little bit of protection. And then Reynolds' First Corps, and that's the Iron Brigade, comes up to reinforce Buford. Reynolds is, though, shot fairly quickly, and he's killed.
30 minutes into the fight? Yeah,
What's cool is people don't know this, is Heath, Buford, and Reynolds all went to West Point together. They were in the same class. And there's a famous scene in the movie where Reynolds is sitting on his horse and he's talking with John Buford, said, let's go surprise Harry Heath. It was not that let's go beat him up. Let's just go show Harry who's in front of him, you know.
There's t-shirts with that, and it shows them holding balloons and little party hats, and they're like, let's go surprise Harry Heath.
And that's the other thing, that these all these generals, they know each other so well. Like you mentioned that Armistead and Hancock are best friends.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, they know each other. They know their tactics. They know a little bit more about them. They know their capabilities. And that's the one thing that Reynolds, whenever he first comes up, he says, we need good ground. And he's asking Buford, you know, is this good ground to fight on? And in the seminary, there's a little cupola, you know, a little thing up top that they're up and they're using that as scouting to, you know, get a better vantage point to see the battle and everything. Union is eventually pushed back to Cemetery Ridge, but it's getting late and the Confederates don't pursue, and then the Union starts digging in. And that is where I think the battle's lost. Yeah. That if the Confederate pushes that advantage, that they can keep pushing the Union back and they don't get the good ground, they can't dig in. But again, they're hesitant first time in command. So that ended the first day of the battle, and then there's even, I think it's definitely in the book, maybe in the movie about Gettysburg, that the Confederates are talking about, you know, you can even, it's the Confederate generals, like, you know, he didn't push the advantage, and you can hear them digging it up there, and they know it's going to be.
Trimble complained. Joe Early was kind of in the impression that we shouldn't do anything.
Longstreet was the same way with that.
Longstreet was the same way with him.
Trimble was complaining, if I had one brigade,
yeah,
give me one regiment, I could have took that hill.
Yeah, he works his way down.
I always tell people to buy the director's cut of Gettysburg and director's cut of Gods and Generals, because you see there's a lot more stuff they took out that you see. There's a Council of War. Yeah, there's a Council of War where A.P. Hill, Jubal Early, Robert Rhodes, and Richard S. Steele's all having a Council of War lead. And Ewell keeps apologizing for not being more aggressive. And finally, Early says, well, we can't make the attack. It's too fortified position now. But we shouldn't withdraw. And Lee finally snaps and said, we can't withdraw and we can't attack. Then what are we to do? We have to do one or the other. And you see Lee starting to lose his temper. For the first time in the entire war, you see Lee start questioning a lot of things because he doesn't have Jackson. If, like we said, Jackson would have been there. The infamous order, if it's practical, we take the hill. There wouldn't be no if. Jackson said, do you want the hill or not? You know, that's the big difference in the army.
Even if Lee said don't take the hill, Jackson would have been like, they're on the hill.
We're taking
the hill.
Yeah. And Richard Anderson, he even looked at Lee and said, it's so fortified now, I don't know if we can get up it. That night, they don't show it in the movie, but Richard Anderson arrived. He said, there's no way we can get up that hill now.
So to give an idea of what the battle lines look like, because they form, it's mainly north to south, that the Confederates are on the west, the Union's on the east, and the Union looks kind of like a fishhook, that it's in the north, it wraps around Culp's Hill, and by the way, visit Culp's Hill. There's a lot of stuff there that's usually overlooked that people mainly go to, Little Round Top and where Pickett's Charge was, but go to those other areas too, because there's fighting happened there, and there's monuments, and it's a good story. You know, it completes the story of the battle. And then it has the fishhook up around the north, around Culp's Hill, stretches all the way down to Little Round Top, and they mainly called it the Rocky Hill. They didn't know the name of it at the time. And so the second day that the Confederates they notice, hey, there's nobody up on that little rocky hill. There's, as Roger and Tyler mentioned before, there's just this flag, signal corps that's up there. So the Confederates try to flank the Union by going south around Little Round Top. And so again, flanking, they're going to try and come in perpendicular to what the line is and just roll up your line because you're all facing one way to face the battle. Now you're looking at coming from the side, you're getting just a few people, a few soldiers facing that way, so you can much better force the attack on there. The Confederates are slow to move, though, mainly because they don't have Stuart there, so they don't know the lay of the land, and so they have to backtrack a few times because they start marching on one road, and then they realize they come out of these trees. Oh, the Union can see us here. If we keep marching, we're going to be slaughtered. They're going to start firing on us. So they have to backtrack and loop around, and it takes them a whole lot longer to get in position than what what it should have taken or what they expected. And so the Union does come down from Little Round Top into Devil's Den in the Peach Orchard, and that sickles what you were saying before. And we say about don't take the rocks from Devil's Den. Tyler, you want to tell that story about? I think it was you who told the story last time.
There is a people always go into Devil's Den and be like, oh, we'll take souvenirs at the Rock. Yeah, don't do that. They will return those rocks instantly. The rocks are supposedly haunted,
and bad things happen if you take it.
Yeah,
and that's why people return it. They'll mail them back.
Yeah, they will mail them back. The national park has a mailbox at one point where people were putting them back in and be like,
mailbox at the Devil's Den rock collection on the mailbox. Like what it says.
Just so many bad things happen if people were taking those rocks, and it had the name before the battle. Yeah, so that kind of tells you something.
Actually, before the battle, the area was a picnic area.
Yeah, picnic.
Yeah,
no, not now.
Now, but we were talking about General Sickles. You mentioned General Sickles, the Third Corps. He moves his corps out 1.5 miles advance of the Union line because he didn't like the area he was at. His line was actually at Devil's Den, toward the Valley of Death, and on up toward the center of the line. Well, he moves out
thinking he's going to get the higher.
And if you look at the topography, it is higher, but now he's 1.5 miles in front of the Union line. So he sticks out like a sore thumb in a V formation. And Longstreet saw him move. Longstreet was over by where the Mississippi Monument's at now. And he sees Sickles' corps out there. And that's why Longstreet had to make that double quick backtracking around different roads because Sickles could see him. And everybody yells at Sickles, oh, he disobeyed orders, he disobeyed orders, he disobeyed orders. But by Sickles moving forward, it delayed Longstreet. If Sickles wouldn't have been there, Longstreet could have brought his entire corps almost on line and advanced and crushed the Union line. So Sickles being out there, he's kind of like the airbag in a car crash. He's kind of out there and he takes the brunt of the hit from Longstreet. And granted, it hurt the Third Corps, but it did take the brunt of the hit.
Because time they came up and dealt with what, Fifth Corps coming up,
They
were what was coming up. The Confederates were already hurt.
The Confederates who hit there were already worn out from days of marching to Gettysburg.
Fighting Sickles,
and then fighting the huge Fifth Corps under General Skiles.
And going up that hill.
Yeah, and then you got to go cross terrain that's not very forgiving.
And then another thing a lot of people miss at Gettysburg on the second day's fighting, A.P. Hill is fighting too.
Yeah.
He pushes in the center and towards town.
That's where the 1st Minnesota comes into play. That's against Hill. And so that's the only part of Lee's army that moves at one time because Ewell had already been engaged before any of them because he thought Longstreet was engaging on the one side and Hill, and then with the communication lines are so far apart they couldn't tell.
And you mentioned before that and this is when we recorded in the past, that the one thing that would have changed the course of the battle completely, walkie-talkies.
Oh yeah, if they had a communication like we have today, it'd have been a lot different.
Well, the North would have had that too, so they could have countered.
Yeah,
but then that's as you mentioned, the other fighting, and that's in the North. That's around Culp's Hill, and that's where a lot of it happened.
Hey, Yule fought more at the nighttime, didn't he?
Yeah, he fought on night as the last second more than he did today. But he did make a daytime attack because he thought the way Lee's battle plan was set up was he wanted to double envelop the Union line and crush it on both ends and circle them, and then make the Union army surrender. Ewell assumes that Longstreet is going to attack at this time right on the dot because they had talked and they had a council of war. Longstreet made it clear that he wants to wait for Pickett. you'll assume that, okay, and then Lee says, well, Hood and McLaws will be efficient.
And so some background on that is that Pickett is coming up. He's the last. He's the rear of the Confederate line, and they're marching this real long, stream of troops that it takes a long time for them to get up. So he's waiting for these extra supports. Yeah, they're waiting for extra troops to come, and so Lee is saying, "No, the guys you got here is good enough. Go ahead." So, all right, Roger, continue.
Yeah, so he's kind of delaying. Longstreet's delaying the attack. Ewell automatically assumes that Longstreet's going to attack when told. He doesn't hear any fighting down there, so he thinks, well, maybe Longstreet's getting in position. I'm going to go ahead and strike. He strikes. Longstreet can't hear Ewell. There's this famous thing in the Civil War called the acoustic shadow, where you might not hear the battle, but you could see it and see the smoke and the flashes, but you're not going to hear the noise. And I think that's what the Confederates were experiencing at Gettysburg. They could see the smoke of Ewell's corps, but they couldn't really hear what was going on Culp's Hill. Longstreet delays. I don't think Longstreet gets engaged until 4 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And there's this famous scene in the movie where Hood rides up and says, "They don't need guns to defend. All I can do is throw rocks down on you." Well, that's a true statement. General Hood did not want to make that attack. He comes to Longstreet 3 or 4 times asking Longstreet to change the battle plan for him. And now Lee would give corps commanders the ability to change his plans. He did it with Jackson, he did it with Longstreet. He gave him free reign over the battlefield. Longstreet says, "No, I'm not going to change. I'm going to show this old man that this is wrong." And that's where Longstreet's reputation gets diminished. It gets a tarnish on it. It's because he did argue with Lee at Gettysburg about the attack on July 2nd, as well as July 3rd.
And now in the peach orchard down there with some of the buildings, you can see some of the cannonball holes still.
The tall
go through them. Yeah, and with all this delaying time, that the Union does reinforce Little Round Top, and the 83rd Pennsylvania is on the front of the hill, and that's with Strong Vincent. And he's shot, and he will die on July 7th. And he's attacked by the 4th and 5th Texas, which is Hood coming up. And then the 20th Maine, who a couple days, actually in the movie, it's presented like it's that morning, the day before, the morning of, that they pick up some soldiers from the 2nd Maine, that they were remaining. How many of them were there?
100.
I think I have that written down somewhere.
125.
Yeah, and they were thought they signed up to fight with the 2nd Maine, but they signed a longer contract, and so they were held over, and they kind of had a mutiny. They rebelled against it, so they're kind of kept as prisoners. But they joined in. It was back in May. It was May 23rd that the 2nd Maine joins the 20th Maine. And all of this is where Chamberlain, with his being a rhetoric professor and everything, he can speak real well. Very educated man, great public speaker. That he eventually goes into government, and he's in politics. He was politics. Yeah,
he's governor, man.
Afterwards, and so you can see where this starts. And he convinces all but 3 of the 2nd Maine to join. And actually, it was like all but 6. But then, whenever the fighting starts, a couple of them say, "All right, they're holding them prisoner. All right, you got to stay here. Oh, they're coming. They're shooting at us, and I have no gun. Give me a gun. I
like the one where it says, "Well, no man's going to call me a coward." And I think that comes back to that honor thing they had.
Yeah.
So the Union position with the 2nd Maine, they're wrapped around the back of Little Round Top, and it's what they call refused a line, which is like forming a right angle so that you cannot be flanked. And so you have a solid fighting front against any flanking attack. And so from now, the Union position kind of looks like a U staple. That after you use a staple, that it goes along the front and then it wraps around on both ends. So double hooked fish hook, if you want to think of it that way. And they repel several attacks from the 15th Alabama. Everyone on that end of the line, it starts running low of ammunition, and there's all these requests being sent back, and even just over the hill of, "Hey, do you have any ammunition?" Whatever, and they start taking ammunition off of the wounded, and you get everything you can. Eventually, they realize, all right, what do we do? We can't retreat. If we move back, or if the Confederates get us, then the whole army, we're going to get flanked, and that's the end of us. If they get around us coming from behind. So Chamberlain eventually orders bayonets and a right wheel forward movement. They really play this up in the movie. It's like this, oh, what a brilliant idea of fixing bayonets and do it. But whenever he yells, fix bayonets, and he's telling him, and then one guy's like, you mean charge? It's like, everybody knew what was happening. We have it's our only option. We can't shoot back. We can't retreat. They're still coming. They know this is coming.
What I love is in the movie, like you said, they really play this moment up. Ellis Spears, who commands Company A, he writes a memoir after the war, and I've read it. I'll have to see if I can get it to Tyler. Ellis Spears says it wasn't that he called all the officers together and we're going to charge. Like he says, charge. Ellis Spears heard the command bayonets because he thought they were going to stay right where they were at and just fight hand to hand and stand where they were at. He looks off and he sees Chamberlain move. And that's when Ellis Spears goes, did I miss something? And I wasn't, and that's when Ellis Spears charged. But the command charge was never heard by Spears. And Ellis Spears was like, what's going on here? He's quite shocked. Yeah.
Well, the one thing that Chamberlain did do is he did reposition his troops, that they were.
Yeah, he did.
So if you want to think that the Union position is going north to south, he then is on the south end. He goes, east. And then he also then doubles back going north to actually really wrap around. So he does position himself because the Confederates keep coming farther and farther. They keep moving more and more to their right to try to get around. And he's moving more and more to Chamberlain's moving more to his left to try and stop him. And so he puts himself in position to repel the attack. So that is, very important thing. Yeah.
I think what it was true to mention too, and we've talked about this, where the 20th Main Monument is now. That was the center.
Where it is too.
Yeah, it's the center. The monument is always at the center of the regiment, and then they have flank marche where the regiment was positioned. So what I always tell people is when you go there, the terrain has changed since 1863 because they put in a parking lot now, and they put in some other stuff. That hill was a lot steeper than what you see today. I know Oates' Alabamians who made that chart going up the hill said that it was like they had to use the trees to pull themselves up and then fire and then pull themselves up again. It wasn't this, but they marched up real calmly. They were scattering out different positions. They were trying to get around. So the hill has changed a lot since 1860.
And it's still pretty steep.
And it's still steep now.
Yeah.
Especially where his monument is. Because I always think, people think, oh, it's like you hear the round top, you hear 20th Main. It's right there on the front side. No. It's on the back side of that hill, and it's on a rock, and it's on a steep part too.
We've actually tried to walk up it, and you can't. It's tough to do.
A group called the Liberty Rifles did a charge. They got a whole group of how many was in the 15th Alabama, the whole regiment thing, and they did a fake charge. National Park let them charge up, doing the rebel yell and all that, and you can see half these guys.
They were dropping out of line.
They're like. It's
unwashed.
Deep.
It's steep.
Including doing that yell takes a lot of breath out of you too when you're moving.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you brought up the infamous rebel yell. When was that started?
It was started actually during it wasn't even our battle that started it. It was actually started at the Battle of Shiloh. When the Confederates make the advance on Sherman's camp. One of the Confederate generals said, "Let's scare the devil out of the Union soldiers."
It was like scream like banshees.
Scream like banshees. Everybody gives it to Jackson at so it says yell like furies. It was actually started at the Battle of Shiloh, and one Union veteran, and I love this. The one Union veteran said, "If you heard the rebel yell and you was not scared, you was not there, because you knew the people that were coming were not going to stop.
They were coming. They meant business."
After the war, they asked a Confederate veteran to do it. And he says, well, I can't do it. I don't have my teeth in and my belly's full, and you have to do it at a run, and I can't run anymore. So no one really knows what the Confederate rebel yell even
they had some veterans do it, but they're much older.
They were in their 90s, and it didn't sound...
Just like 1913, they're doing this video. It's so cool to hear these guys try to do it, and these veterans do it, but imagining what the real thing was is
on a smoke-filled battlefield with the battle flags and the smoke of battle and the noise, and then all of a sudden you hear someone yelling at you, basically screaming at you with a bayonet on their rifle. It had to, but if you were a Union soldier, you probably thought,
especially in the woods, you couldn't see.
Yeah,
because that happened to him at Antietam down in the West Woods.
Yeah,
and it's like Jaws. Did you hear the music?
Yeah,
the shark's there. Yeah. Where? And you hear the rebel yell, "Oh my God!" And you can't see them just yet because of the smoke or trees or whatever else, and it's just impending doom coming.
Yeah.
What's it sound like? Death.
Yeah.
But after the 20th Maine attacks, there's a funny scene in the movie and in the book where a 20th Maine soldier has a couple of prisoners and he's marching with bayonet pointing, and he goes to Chamberlain, "I ain't got no bullets." He's like, "Not so loud." Yeah. And so they eventually, Chamberlain does move to Big Round Top, which is what they call the Woody Hill, after reinforcements arrive. And then they kind of set up camp up there. That reinforces the southern flank of the Union Army. And that ends the second day of fighting.
Oh, you go to Cemetery Hill, there's fighting over there.
Yeah.
At about 7:00, General Hayes's Wheat's Tigers, the Louisiana Brigade, along with another brigade of Walker, tried to go up Cemetery Ridge in a night attack. It was the only time they didn't really have to do a night attack, because you can't coordinate anything. Mm-hmm. It's not like you got night vision goggles in 1863 where you can say, "Hey, there they are." Yeah. They actually push the Union out of their position. They push them all the way to the Evergreen Cemetery. Now, what hurt the Confederates was they weren't bringing up reinforcements. They didn't think the attack would. Ewell didn't put much into the attack. They get pushed back by, this will make West Virginians happy, the 7th West Virginia arrives, part of the 2nd Corps of the 2nd Division. Or they've been in 3rd Division, but they come up with Carroll. And they push. And if you go there, you'll see the West Virginia Monument. If you go down over the hill, there's a road, a park road, and there's another marker that says this is where the 7th West Virginia finally stopped its attack. The poor 7th West Virginia earned the name the Bloody 7th that day. They suffered a lot of casualties. But that was the only nighttime attack at Gettysburg. That was the only time that they tried to a night assault. And then things kind of peter out. There's a little spark firing between the sides, but it's pretty much quiet after that.
So then the next day on July 3rd, and actually it's kind of poignant in the movie that they mentioned, hey, if we win this battle today, this could be our Independence Day for the Confederates, and July 4th being the other, United States Independence Day. But the funny thing is the 20th Maine is moving to the center of the Union line, and they say, when they come to get Chamberlain in the morning, it's like, "We're going to move you." He's like, "You're relieved." It's like, safest spot, right in the smack dab center of the Union line. Well, so
about that, that's going to change.
So the third day is famous for Pickett's charge. So he arrives late, and he's upset because he thinks he's going to miss the battle. And Longstreet tries to appease him a bit of saying, "Hey, you're the last one in, but if we have to retreat, you're the first one out." And Pickett's like, "Really?" So Pickett's all gung ho. He's itching for a battle, and he gets more than he can handle. So Longstreet is very much opposed to this, but Lee's pretty much desperate. He doesn't want to retreat because he's like, "All right, we fought here 2 days, and we'll have nothing to show for it. We got to do something." Pickett's thrilled with this. That he's like, "Yeah, we get to lead this battle." And this, they think this is going to be the glorious day for the Confederacy. And it's the faith in Lee. If Lee asks us to do it, we can do it. And so there's 150 Confederate cannon, somewhere around 80 to 100 Union cannon that start firing back and forth. The Confederates open fire. They're going to try and soften up the Union lines, do as much damage as they can before the attack. And supposedly you could hear the roar of the cannons all the way to Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. And it's like a 3-hour drive from each. Yeah. It's in the center of the state. So that tells you how far it is. And of course, the Confederates always overshoot. And so they're hitting behind the Union lines. They did some damage with hitting some of the supply lines, and they hit one of the magazine storage areas too.
Hit Meade's headquarters and killed a couple of his staff. They were dropping shells about everywhere.
So it's kind of funny that how much of a military genius that Jackson was, and it kind of didn't rub off that they always miss still.
I think what happened too, and people don't realize this too, all the ordnance for the Army of Northern Virginia came from Richmond Tredegar Ironwork Arsenal at Tredegar. Well, the arsenal had caught fire and burned down right before Gettysburg. So all their ordnance was now coming from Raleigh, North Carolina. Well, North Carolina used a different primer charge than the Tredegar. And all these Virginia gunners were looking at it going, how do we set this? So they were going by the Tredegar Ironworks chart, but using new ordnance that they had never used before. So the chart was not matching what the detonator would actually do. And that's why they were overshooting a lot of their shots. And poor E. Porter Alexander, I felt bad for him. You got a 25-year-old officer colonel commanding this artillery barrage who is using ordnance that he's not even familiar with.
Mm-hmm. And so after they do this barrage of cannon fire, how long did that last?
They believe they opened up at about 2 p.m. and didn't stop until about 3.
So it's about an hour long.
About the artillery will for now an hour.
And the Union soldiers, they start firing, and it's all right, heads down. And then, well, the Union cannon troops, they had the fire back, but everyone else is get behind a little stone wall and drop back.
What really hurt the Confederates was they didn't really have the high ground to see the Union line in front of them. They knew that the stone wall was there, and they knew it was there. So as Alexander's looking through his field glasses, he sees Union guns leaving. So he's thinking, I'm softening them up. It wasn't they were softening them up. Those guns had run out of ammunition. So as one gun crew was leaving, another cannon artillery unit would come up. So Alexander's thinking that this is the Union withdrawal, that they cracked the Union line. And that's when he sends the request for Longstreet to bring these divisions up. And it's actually it's kind of like what Wellington did to Napoleon at Waterloo. Just in
because the Confederates, we didn't have high ground in Gettysburg at all, so we could not see what they were doing.
And so, just if you haven't seen what's the new movie, the newest movie is that called Napoleon, or is it called
Napoleon?
Yeah, they pull back and fool him into coming forward, and then brings out his reserves.
Meade did the same thing to Lee.
And again, those who do not study history are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of like Fredericksburg, but this is in reverse. That now the Union has this little stone wall they're hiding behind. They call it the angle. Mm-hmm. And there's little copse of trees, and that's where the Confederates are going to, as they're marching across, that's where they're going to convene. That's what they're aiming for. They're all like, all right, we're going to regroup at this place, and we're going to hit them hard right in this little group of trees here. And so it's a mile march over open ground that is covered with little clusters of trees. Sometimes it's Pickett, Armistead, Kemper, Garnett. But again, we mentioned Garnett, he rode his horse because he had a leg injury. And they're telling him, all right, this is suicide. But Garnett, it was a show of pride and redemption. Yeah, that him and Jackson had a beef before, that Garnett was accused of cowardice.
Commanding the Stonewall Brigade, which was a no-no.
Yeah, and so Jackson's gone, so he can't make amends there. And so what's he going to do? He's got to show his bravery, and he does it with the suicide mission. That's the thing whenever he gets hit with the double canister, and him and his horse become ground meat. And then Armistead, as he's going across, he's leading his troops, and he wants to make sure that they can see him. So he takes his hat off and puts it on the end of his sword, and he's marching across. And my chemistry teacher from high school, he told a story that he took his son there, and his son was, 8 years old when we were in high school, and young kid. And so he had the hat, and he took it off, put it on his little toy sword. He's like, "Look, Dad, I'm Armistead." And so as Armistead's going, the sword pokes through the hat and falls down. So he has this hat like around his hand. So he takes it off again, puts it up top, leading his troops, that they have to make some adjustments going in turns going over it. They have to make these different obliques, they call them. And they have to go over fences and across roads and stuff. And the Union cannon are still pounding the troops, but the Confederates don't like shooting over their own soldiers' heads. So their cannon are silent. Then the Confederates are just taking so much fire. And then whenever they get close, they get the canister and the double canister. And the Confederates actually do make it to the angle. And they actually break through briefly, but then that's quickly crushed because of the reinforcements from the Union. Both Hancock and Armistead are wounded. And back whenever they parted ways in California, Armistead said, if I ever, go against you in anger, may God strike me dead. So this is weighing on Armistead's mind the entire time because he knows Hancock is sitting up there on that hill and he knows what he said. And he had, Armistead doesn't survive, but Hancock does. But that's something that will haunt him for the rest of his life with those wounds, and he never fully recovers. And Armistead sent a package to Hancock's wife that actually had Armistead's Bible in it. That they in the book of the movie they show him with the package, handing it before the battle, but they don't show what it was. At the end of the movie, they reveal it. But Roger, you're saying about it wasn't a bullet that hit Hancock, not directly.
He was sitting in his saddle, and his McClellan saddles had pommel hooks for different attachments that can go on the saddles. And the bullet actually hit the pommel hook of his near the horn, near his from his saddle. The bullet clipped it and actually put the hook and the bullet into Hancock. And Hancock being Hancock, he kind of reels in the saddle and they get him off the horse. And they showed it in the movie. Hancock actually did say it in real life. He said, "I will not be taken off this field till this engagement is decided." And he said, "Now get me a tourniquet before I bleed to death." That actually was from Hancock. He actually did say that.
Being the soldier.
Yeah, he was. And
the spot where he said he was hit was not where
No.
it's marked.
Yeah, whenever he came back later, he
marked it with a stick, but it never, because then he died the next year.
he was not hit where they said he was. Same thing with Armistead. There's a famous little monument that says this is where Armistead fell. He actually didn't fall there. He actually fell in the midst of Alonzo Cushing's battery. And Alonzo Cushing was another brave young gentleman who was only 23 and commanded a four-gun artillery unit and was killed there, trying to repel Armistead's men. So you really kind of study the map when you go to Gettysburg, because these guys said, "Yeah, I was here," but then they might be 30 yards from where they were supposed to be.
The 27th Indiana, we fought them on the third day, the 31st day. They said it shows the charges. The monument's like, "Oh, this is where they got." That is not where they got. One of the veterans walked over with a stick, pointing. He's like, "This is how far we got."
It is nowhere near that little monument.
Yeah, it's like probably about that far.
Yeah, they were close to us.
but it's a monument. It's got to be true.
Oh, it's got to be true.
Just like things on the internet.
Yeah, I hate that.
But the other thing, whenever Armistead got hit, is he tells them, is Hancock here? I want to see Hancock, and they tell him Hancock's here. He's like, no, not both of us, not on the same day, not here.
What Armistead was actually doing at Cushing's battery was a Confederate battle flag had fell, and they showed it in the movie. And I think the colors belonged to the 14th Virginia. And he's saying, rally to the colors, and that's when the bullet strikes him. It strikes him in the upper abdomen area and drops him. But he survives for a couple days. He's actually taken to the Culp's farm, where he would die a couple of days later.
Buried in Baltimore now.
Buried at Baltimore, where he was from. He's from Baltimore.
And so then the Confederates retreat back across the field, and Lee sees Pickett coming back, and he says, "See to your division." And this is the most haunting line in the movie. And Pickett replies to Lee, he says, "Sir, I have no division." And it just shows you the casualties, and he's completely decimated. And it's such a change from the Pickett before the battle of he's whooping and hollering and, "Yeah, let's go get him." And then he comes back and he realizes this was an unmitigated disaster.
I like that scene, and I like the scene where they showed Longstreet on his horse and he's talking with his staff. And Sorrell is giving him the rundown of Pickett's division, and you hear him say, out of 13 colonels, only 4 are left of Pickett's division. Garnett's missing, feared dead. Armistead's wounded, feared dead. Or Armistead's missing, and Kemper's mortally wounded. And that's when Longstreet says, "I don't want to hear anymore." You see this frustration in Longstreet.
I like the scene. Now, this is just movie part based off it, where General Lee comes out and all the reenactors see him. Well, Martin Sheen was like, "I want to ride out real quick," and just, see he was dressed up in uniform. And then all the reenactors came out and started cheering, "Lee, Lee, Lee."
And Ron Maxwell's like, film this.
And it stayed with it. And I love that because they went along with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like Martin Sheen went out to see the reenactors and tell them, say thank you and that. And they just started chanting. And it's like, that is cool.
And so, Lee was so confident in the attack that they thought we're invincible. We can do this, and it shows that Longstreet was correct. He was completely against. He said it's a suicide mission. He was right, and Longstreet and even Pickett, to an extent, have kind of bitterness against Lee. Because that, while the loss of Jackson was a turning point, this was the thing that the crippling wound to the South, and they go on and fight for another 2 years, almost another year and a half, whatever. But then they retreat south, and it's just downhill from there.
Another part of the movie I like, and we see a part of Lee that shows what kind of person he is when the men are coming back from Pickett's charge, and this actually did happen. He was setting on Traveler, and the men are passing him, and he's looking at him saying, "It's my fault. It's all my fault." And there was counts of soldiers wanting to reform and hit him again, because the Army of Northern Virginia really did believe they could take that position. And I love that one soldier. He said, "Well, let us reform and hit him again." And Lee's like, "No, there'll be other days." And you start seeing Lee really thinking, my army is not as invincible as I thought it was, and this is my fault. I asked him to do too much. Yeah. And then he goes and he meets with Longstreet, and they're sitting around the campfire. And Lee makes a comment which really shows Lee. He says, "I'm thankful they don't die for us." And I think you see Lee's changing too. Longstreet has definitely changed from it. Pickett, like you said, he's changed from it. All the officers that were at Gettysburg were changed in some way by that battle. And I think even after the war, they were changed. Hood dies a broken man because of Gettysburg and his wounds. Pickett's never the same. He didn't go to a reunion of the Army of Virginia until almost 20, 30 years after it, because he felt such guilt. Longstreet was outcast, and he joined the Republican Party, which was a big no-no.
Yeah.
Anyone should have been outcast, in my opinion. Should have been Hood after, because then we put him in charge of
the Army of Tennessee,
and it just failed there.
So everybody was
basically Pickett's charge 2.0.
Well, I think why they thought Pickett's charge would work too was because of the Battle of Pea Ridge, Arkansas. The Confederates made a charge just like Pickett's charge, and actually broke the Union line at Pea Ridge in Arkansas, and then had gotten back to Lee these tactics, and Lee had learned it at West Point from studying Napoleon and Wellington, that he thought he could do it. The Army of Virginia must have been better trained than the Army of the West. We got the Army of Northern Virginia.
Yeah, we got someone that invaded Russia in the winter.
Yeah.
Guaranteed we're better than them.
Yeah, and overconfidence was Lee's downfall, but I think Gettysburg really humbled him down a lot. And he never recovered from it. Matter of fact, after the battle, he offered his resignation to Jefferson Davis, and Davis wouldn't accept it.
Yeah. And I want to, speaking of that, it's after the second day, so late on the second, that Stewart does come back.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's very contrite because Lee, he's very proud. "Oh, look what I did. Yeah. Hey, guys, from here. Yeah. Are you trying to see me?" And Lee's like, "Dude, where you been?" It's like,
but cavalry was involved on
July 3rd.
Yeah. So he did
it's just not
read himself
really
a bit
about.
There's a famous, and this actually wrote down by one of Lee's aides. I think it was Marshall. He says when Stewart arrives, he arrives with the flags waving, cavalier, band playing, and he comes with all these supply wagons that he had captured down in Hanover. He says, "Look at all these supply wagons I have now." And Lee goes, "What good are they to me now? Well, you were supposed to tell me where the enemy was, and you have failed in that mission. And I was drawn into battle here without any knowledge of the enemy's strength or position." And I think he saw that he hurt Stewart's feelings. He said, "Well, there'll be another day you can redeem me."
Yeah, because Stewart right then takes his sword off and he offers to resign. You realize he screwed up.
Lee and Stewart are like a father and son model partnership between the two men, because Stewart is a lot younger. Stewart misses the Mexican War. His first action is against the Indians out west, and he fights at Harper's Ferry against John Brown. And he acts as Lee's Camp DA, and that's where they first meet. But I think he saw he hurt Stewart, and he said, "No, there'll be more time for that. There's no time for it here, but there will be time."
So Lee's ticked off. He blows his top, and then he realizes, okay, I went a little bit too far, and he pulls it back a bit.
Like he's a grown man. I shouldn't have demolished him in front of others like that. And I think Lee felt bad.
Stuart started crying.
But I think when Stewart dies at Yellow Tavern, Lee's like, I lost another one. And he even says that I lost another.
He almost lost Longstreet.
He almost lost Longstreet at the Wilderness.
Same time Jackson was killed
About the same area.
a year later.
So, it's an interesting partnership between Stewart and what Stewart's doing at the Gettysburg campaign. Every reenactor, you can ask Turtle here, we always, Stewart would have been there. Stewart did this. But Stewart is a good cavalry general.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he is very good early in the war. He proves it. But he's always remembered, as Longstreet is, for the Gettysburg campaign. It's really not fair to them.
Same way with Pickett. That's the only way he's known.
Yeah. And he fights a beautiful battle in 64. But Pickett's not remembered for that. He's remembered for July 3rd, 1863.
Everybody knows Gettysburg from Gettysburg, but look at Brandy Station.
Yeah, he does a brilliant job at Brandy Station a couple weeks before that.
Yeah, the overconfidence gets to them.
Yeah, so I think Lee and Stewart
And nobody wants to remember Hood.
remember General Hood, which is a shame because Hood is remembered for his blunders in Tennessee and not what he did at Antietam or Fredericksburg or Chancellorsville. He's remembered for July 2nd, 1863 and 1864.
Yeah, but what have you done for me lately type thing.
Yeah. Same thing with the Union generals. No one remembers Reynolds just for him being killed, but they don't realize he fought at Chancellorsville, Fredericksburg, Antietam, and he did brilliant there.
That's why they earned the name Iron Brigade for a reason. Yeah.
Same thing with Lafayette McLaws.
Yeah.
He's a very little known general, but yet he fights so brilliantly early in the war. In the 7 days, he's forgotten because of July 2nd, 1863. So everything, all these historians, they base everything on Gettysburg, and that's fine. I mean, if you're an historian, that's your thing, and I'm an historian. But you got to remember what these guys did prior. Lee's the same way. What did Lee do after the Civil War? No one really knows. He kind of stays quiet. He becomes leader of Washington Lee College, but no, he doesn't write anything down because he doesn't want to be remembered as that. But yet everybody still remembers him for Gettysburg and the Civil War era. But he did a lot more after the war. He was very involved with the Freedmen's Bureau. People don't know that about Robert E. Lee. He tried to help ex-slaves, and he gets blasted for it by others, but he sticks to his guns.
And so I want to end this last little bit on the relationship between the enlisted men from the different armies. They fought each other. They went back and forth, but I believe it's in Gods and Generals that it's on like Christmas morning across the Rappahannock River that there's a Confederate soldier on one side, there's the Union one on the other, and hey, Johnny Reb, hey, Billy Yank, and they exchange, was it tobacco for coffee, something like that?
And they're like, we should take Burnside for a lame horse.
Yeah, what would you like? We'll keep the lame horse, you keep Burnside. Yeah. There was a lot of that during the Civil War if we were close to each other.
Yeah.
You hear us say we a lot. And we do it with the 140th. If we're close by, we'll find each other and we'll talk.
I've been at reenactments. I'll see them on the battlefield, and I'll immediately like hand goes up, a finger goes up, stuff like that. It goes back and forth. We love them to death.
Yeah, we harass them, but they love it. We love each other.
Oh, we have to harass them.
We got to harass.
It's a love-hate relationship. It's good natured. You know the roles you're playing, who you are portraying, who you are honoring, and that's what you guys said before, that you are honoring these people.
We did down at Harvest Festival. We did a scenario with the 144. We were close by, and we were kind of in the woods, and they were out in the field. We were yelling at each other, and but during the Battle of Antietam, prime example, after the battle was over the next day on the 18th, both armies come out and they talked about what they had done to each other. And they were exchanging newspapers and tobacco. And then after they had their little truce, they went back to their lines and were ready to shoot each other again.
But they were, collecting their dead, wounded. Same way, Fredericksburg, there was a truce to the Union. Come get your dead and wounded off the field.
Gettysburg was the same way.
Yeah,
July 4th.
Spring also.
There was accounts of that at the Battle of Chancellorsville. Every battle they had fought in especially at Cold Harbor when they were really close in the trenches to each other. Cold Harbor and Spotsylvania, when they could get close to each other, they would say, "Hey, where are you from?" I said, "Well, I'm from Tennessee." "Well, where are you from?" "Pennsylvania." And they would exchange about their families. And I think Chamberlain says it right in the movie. In the end, we're not fighting; we're fighting for each other. And I think that's the Civil War in a nutshell.
And he gets a little bit philosophical in the book, at least. I'm not sure if it's in the movie, but he's talking about we're not fighting, land. People own land, but land here is the same as land there. It's land, and that leads into we're fighting for each other. And even with Armistead, that it's the night before Pickett's charge, he's like, he never does it, but he discusses it. Hey, do you think it'd be all right if I took a flag of truce and went up to see Hancock? Have dinner with him, see how he's doing, that type of thing.
And I love the movie poster for Gettysburg, how it has the sunset and you have the two armies kind of hitting each other at the wall. And the original movie poster says, "Same land, same God, just different dreams." And I think that summarizes the war. We at the end of the day, me and Tyler wear gray, and there's guys in the 140th we know, but at the end, we're all Americans. And we don't hold any will toward the Union soldiers, that we can beat. Maybe we harass each other. That happens a lot. But there's no ill will there. And I think those guys in 1860 to 1861, 1864, or 65 probably felt the same way.
Like, look after the war at all the reunions. There's that famous picture of the Confederates shaking hands with the Union soldiers, probably at Pickett's Charge
At
Field.
the wall.
Yeah, at the wall. Those soldiers were probably both there shooting at each other. We know for a fact shooting each other, but probably those Confederates were charging at them that day.
Yeah, well, it's the thing that there were some families that were split. There were brothers on either side. So it's, you're fighting against the other person. You're going to try and shoot and kill the other person. You want to defeat the other person's army, but that could be your brother over there, literally. And at the end of the day, it's okay. I guess I didn't serve in the military, but it's soldiers. You're doing a job. It's kind of like the Godfather. It's business, it's not personal. It is we got to do this. There's a duty to it.
There's a famous little story about the Civil War after the war. This about this little town, and two soldiers. One joins the north, one joins the south. Well, one lost his right leg, and the other one lost his left leg, and they were good friends. Well, this father or the daughter of one and the son of the one got married. So every year they'd meet and buy a pair of shoes together because they had the same shoe size. And they would just split the pair of shoes up. So I don't think there was any hatred. I think that at the end of it, they realized, what were we even fighting for? Just because we had a different belief or a different dream or a different way we wanted the country to go.
And some of that's shown in the book and the movie about Gettysburg with Thomas Chamberlain. Whenever they come across some Confederate prisoners. And he says, what are you fighting? He's like, my rights. It's like, your rights? What? He's like, no, my rights. And it's kind of like an open thing of, I thought you were fighting for slaves. He's like, no. And at the very end, they have the typical greeting or farewell. See you in hell, Billy Yank. See you in hell, Johnny Reb. And so it shows a different dynamic of them.
I think there's another older movie. It's made in the 70s or 80s called Blue and the Gray.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I've watched it. It's a TV show.
Yeah, and it was a miniseries. And they're this scared Confederate soldiers and scared Union soldiers up in the same ditch together. And they said, "What's it like owning slaves?" And that one goes, "Slaves, we didn't have shoes." So I think that's showing right there that not all Southern soldiers, especially dirt privates and corporals like us, we wouldn't have been able to afford a slave. Only 1% owned a slave.
Yeah.
So
we're the bad guys.
We're the bad guys.
Yeah.
But you got to remember, there was also slavery in the North. Delaware was a slave-holding state. So, there's a different dynamic.
In the Emancipation Proclamation, it freed the slaves in the South. It didn't free the slaves.
It didn't have any control of anyway.
Right.
The South considered itself its own separate country at that point. Matter of fact, Jefferson Davis laughed at it. He said, "What gives him the right thing? He can tell the Confederacy what to do. We're separate countries." But Lincoln signed the Emancipation, so England wouldn't enter the war.
And he had a brand new army.
And I think there's so much dynamics in Civil War reenactments now where we heckle each other, but there's no hatred there between us.
There's a couple people we here and there don't like, but that's just how they are as a person. But most of the time we get along with not everybody. You're all brothers out there. Like if something happened to say my group, the 140th or any other union group we're with, they're going to run to our aid. Same with us. We'll run to their
In
aid.
fact, we had a guy get hurt at Harvest Festival when we stopped the battle, and there was Confederates coming over and checking on him. Just because we're a brotherhood and we don't like seeing anything happen to each other.
Yeah.
And you told a story before about there was some issue with one of your reenactments about having a Confederate flag and how the Union soldiers.
Yeah, it was down at Newmarket several years ago. I think it was Newmarket or Cedar Creek.
Cedar Creek.
This when the whole Confederate flag issue came up. And they said, well, the Confederate soldiers can't carry their battle flag.
No, this was Ohio.
Ohio.
Zora,
Ohio.
Yeah.
And we were all there. I don't know if Turtle was there, but the Union soldiers said, we're not going out on the field. If they can't carry their battle flags and be historically correct, we're not going out. And one of the people that was put on the event said, well, you can't do it, we'll lose out. And then Union records said, not our problem.
Tim, we're not getting paid to go and do this stuff. We're doing it to teach you guys.
Yeah. And they finally let the Confederates take their flags out. You tell they weren't happy about it. And it's the same way if the Union soldiers did something that was historically correct that they didn't like, we would probably stand up for them and say, no, this is not going to happen.
And do you want to talk more about the reenactment? Now, we're going to get things we have left to do are travel tips and then get into contact information. Do you want to say anything about the reenacting?
Well, we have our reenactment season is actually about to start here in April. We have a bunch of close ones. Need help for those. People want to show up. We do bake sales now at them, so donations on that stuff help a bunch. But just come out and support them. We have some in Greene County coming up. We have some in Western Virginia, some in Virginia, but a bunch of reenactments coming up.
The unit's actually going to Bentonville in a couple weeks for the Battle of Bentonville, North Carolina.
And for those of you listening, this is way in the past because this is going to air around in July. So how late in the season do you normally go? So you say start around April.
Yeah, we'll start.
We usually don't end around till October, November.
Yeah.
So we're constantly at something. May not as be as an entire unit. I mean, some of us go and do different events that we want to try out, and then we'll come back and tell the unit, hey, we need to put this on our schedules. I know we're going to Funkstown in July. We'll be at Williamsport. Is it Williamsport, Maryland, coming up this year? We talked about it. We got so many events.
Which I can send a schedule to you if you want. You can post on there.
Yeah, and we'll get into the contact information of how people can find you too on Facebook. And as you were saying before, the overall reenactment community is very family friendly.
Yeah, we're always looking for new people to get into it and teach you the ways and get into reenacting
and our unit's very family oriented.
Yeah.
There's some units that are mostly military. They'll let the women in camp, but they have to leave.
There's some that won't even take, like when I first started a long time ago, they're like, oh, we don't take single mothers. There's some that won't even let you have your girlfriend come with you, but join the group.
The 31st Virginia, we're a lot different. If you want to participate, like my friend, she's not married to anybody in the unit, but she comes to stuff. We have people who just show up and fall in with us, and they like our unit and end up joining us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't need to, even if you have no interest in joining, if you just want to learn some history and to see the reenactment and see what it's all about, you can come and, you guys said that you'll grab someone out of the crowd and
one of them.
Here, hold it. Take this rifle.
He's
march with
the
it.
president of our group, believe it or not. We grabbed him. We're like, I sent them here. He came. His son was joining.
Be careful. It's contagious.
Yeah.
Once you fire the musket, it's your soul.
Yeah. Once you get the smell of gunpowder, you're hooked.
And his son was drilling. Well, he came down for the Philippi reenactment. His son was out there carrying a flag, and we're like, just went over, grabbed him,
dressed him.
Try this on. Here, we're going to drill you a couple times. You're going out now. Huh? Too bad.
Yeah, you're it.
Yeah.
Now he runs the unit.
He's
now the president of our organization. Then we have people who have been in it been 31st, like Ryan Jones, our captain, started reenacting when he was probably about 8, 9, and now he's our captain. So we progress pretty quickly in our companies. And we have people come up and say, how do you get into this? And we start going through what they need.
And we have loaner stuff for you to get it until you get it. The gun's the most expensive part, but we have a company gun, and there's enough guys, trust me, we have extra muskets.
Yeah, we always have extra equipment lying around.
I have an extra set of gear. I have extra clothes.
I got extra stuff.
We bring trailers with us. A lot of guys do.
We're like our own little movie production.
You need an extra tent. We have extra tents.
Yeah, we try to get people involved in it so that the hobby doesn't die. Because it'd be a shame if something would happen to it, because then we'd forget about the Civil War completely. We were coming down the street of Philippi, me and another reenactor, and this little girl stops us out of nowhere. She said, "Can I get my picture taken with you guys?" So we have young ones that come up to stop us and get their picture taken with us, because we're something that you don't see every day.
Yeah. We had it at a White Cover Bridge. We literally got done with the battle, and we had both Union Confederates side by side lined up. Because after the battle, we check our guns and we line up, bow to the crowd, basically. The crowd claps. People running up and taking pictures while we're all lined up. We're like this, like, we just got done. We're tired. We're sweaty.
Yeah, it's like 80 degrees.
80 degrees. We went out, but we'll still do it. We love doing it. And
we're very
the community.
We love when the kids come and talk to us, because they ask us some of the craziest questions that we get.
And when the kids get interested and they show up again and be like, I want to do it, I want to do it, I want to do it. And if you can get the parent to go with it and then they get in it, they're sold.
Yeah.
Because it's a family experience. Like, hey, let's go camping, but we have guns now.
And the women who are in our camp, they mostly do the civilian side, which is really not talked about during the war.
Yeah.
The ladies are more than welcome. They answer more questions, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, because when we're out fighting, they'll be like, well, did they actually do this, actually do that? And we're like, it happened. My girlfriend, she's like, I don't know this stuff. They're out there doing that.
And my friend Mary, who joined, she gets a lot of questions on what the women wore, what the guys wore, what the women would have been doing during the battle on the home front. And she always tells them surviving, just surviving. So yeah, I mean, we love to see people come out and ask us questions, and that's the best teaching tool. We've had school groups come up and ask us questions. We've done school visits.
Yeah, we're trying to get those restarted.
We're trying to get Montague County schools to start letting us
any county schools, like
Marion County. We've been to Marion County. We've been to Mon County.
I've been to Greene County. Because if we can get like donations off them, like $100, it helps us refund the history to keep doing the history. Because it ain't cheap doing this stuff. But we basically have a bank account for the group, and it's like everything it goes back into the reenacting group. We do a couple that we get paid for, it just goes right back into the group.
Powder rations go right back to the group, because gunpowder anymore for us to even go out for one engagement's in the hundreds of dollars now.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine having a cannon, what they pay.
They shoot about 2 pounds of powder a shot. We have one reenactment listed. We get a half a pound of powder showing up, but we have to be there the whole weekend. We're going to try to get as many of our guys as we can there, because all that powder, we're just going to give it right back to the group. We lose money going, like we'll lose gas money, food money, and all that. But when you get stuff, we keep it going.
On the point side of that, we lose money going personally.
Yeah.
But the thrill you get when you have an 8-year-old kid come up and talk to you
after you've died.
After you died, I had one kid cry and think that I was actually dead. That was interesting. I had one person tell me I look good as a corpse, whatever that meant. But it's the thrill of teaching them, because they don't get that anymore with the school systems as they are now. I'm not probably going to get blasted for that.
Yeah. When I went to the last time I did school, they were calling me a hillbilly or like a homeless man. I'm like, no. See it. I will push you off that chair. And then I started talking, and they're like, oh, and I was in there for my school because it was supposed to last only 45 minutes. They ended up canceling these kids' whole class the rest of the day just for the teachers like, I want them to learn this stuff. Because then they pulled out the book. There's none of this in this book.
We come with all the what did Sam Elliott say about us at Gettysburg about reenactors? We come with the all the accoutrements. We come with the love of the history, and we're the best teachers that are free that you can ever get, because we do teach it in a way that
it can't be taught.
It can't be taught, and I think it helps too when school kids actually get to touch our uniform.
Yeah,
or
bring original items. Like you can't go to a museum and
touch a
hold a
cannonball,
bullet, pick up cannonball, see all that stuff.
Makes it more real.
Yeah. It makes it more personable for them.
Yeah.
Because I always tell them when I do like a middle school class, I said some of them were your age. And I think that really brings it to home. And what I do is I say, look around your class. If this was a Civil War regiment, 1 in 5 of you would be dead.
I always like to line them up and act like, say, if you guys were all lined up and this cannon was fired at you, it's just going to go through you. And their faces are just like, and they just get the bug eyes of like, what?
Yeah,
I love doing that.
They don't understand that. They see it in the movies and they see us at reenactments and we get up all fine, brush ourselves off, but
explaining to them why it was so fatal in that back then.
Mm-hmm.
I think what really gets a kid is when you tell them, that cold you had a couple of days ago, that would have killed us.
Yeah.
That common cold could have killed us.
We try to act like we were from the actual back then.
And we get them very involved, and we always do it in a way that we make them feel like they're actually talking to a Union or a Confederate soldier face to face.
And not someone that just got out of his car and walked up the elevator or some crap.
Yeah.
So, finishing off, Tyler, do you have a travel tip, whether it's related to Gettysburg, seeing Civil War reenactors, or anything in general? Anything new you want to add?
Drink water, wear the right shoes, don't do it in extreme heat.
And that's both whenever you're touring the battlefields and you're reenacting. So,
yes.
Good for
All
both.
the above.
Roger?
The shoe part, you don't have a choice in reenacting.
Yeah, you only got one set.
Yeah.
My tip is do a little bit of research before you go, so you kind of understand where you're at on the battlefield and what's going on. As much as I love the National Park Service and I support them 100% in their mission, sometimes that audio tour doesn't go in the depth of what you're looking at. They just give you the brush over of what's going on. But read Killer Angels before you go. Or look at the book, get a map of the Battle of Gettysburg and figure out where the troops were actually located.
Or watch the movie Gettysburg.
I tell people to do that, and they've come back with a whole different perspective of the battle itself.
So get that book I have for Gettysburg and be like really intense and like, oh, here's every troop movement.
And try to do it more than just one weekend. Try to make it a 4 or 5 day trip, because you're going to need it.
Mine kind of goes off what Roger just said about knowing the history of the place you're going to visit, but not only just knowing what happened there, but also the background of what happened there and then afterwards. So you can better appreciate the significance of the place that you're visiting. So not only here's what happened, but here's what happened before. So here's why this is happening. So the whole thing that we've gone into, I hope we imparted that here, is when we didn't just talk about Gettysburg. We gave the whole background of here's what happened in the Civil War beforehand. Here are the main characters. Here's what they were thinking. Here's what their motivation was, and all the rest of it. So you can better appreciate your trip there. The National Park Service does a tremendous job with all their locations, whether it's the battlefields, the monuments, the national parks. And you will become a better person if you visit these places and learn from them. Like you mentioned, do your background homework stuff. What they tell you there is kind of an overview, so you can better understand it and better appreciate it and see it, and appreciate what you're seeing. But knowing that extra little bit can just enhance your whole experience while you are there. And then knowing what happened later on, it's like, oh, well, here's this is the significant impact this had on other events later in life. So if you have a destination or experience that you'd like to have us discuss on the Yinz Goin podcast, or if you'd like to share your favorite destination or a travel tip, please contact me. I'd love to hear your ideas and your feedback. Tyler, how can people get a hold of you?
My Facebook is Tyler Turtle. Yeah, that's That's how I go by it. It works. And my email is turtleclaypole@gmail.com.
And the 31st Virginia, you have is that a Facebook page as well too?
Facebook page.
Roger, you just want to have people contact Tyler if they need anything?
You can contact through Tyler, or it's brahamroger@gmail.com. We're happy to answer your emails about the unit or how to join it.
Yeah, and we can pass it along if need be, if you're very interested, to the president of the group and stuff like that.
For me, my social media is at Matt with DBD on Facebook, X, and Instagram. Email is Matt, MATT, @dreamsbydesigntravel.com. All this information is going to be in the show description. So if you'd like to contact us or at least contact me to book a trip or have any questions for me or the other guys, you can get a hold of us. You don't have to have this written down or have a photographic memory, anything like that. Don't have to worry about spelling either. Please like, follow, subscribe, leave a review, tell a friend if you like what you heard. We'd like to get the word out about what we're doing here. Gentlemen, this was wonderful. Thank you for doing this a second time. Hopefully the audio is better on this. We've had a very rambunctious crew in the room next door to us in our awesome podcast studio that we're using today. So
they did very well today. Last night they were much louder. They did very well today.
It is an honor again to talk to you. The message that you are doing and the work that you are doing is invaluable, and it's really appreciated. And I'm a history lover, and have people learning and knowing things that actually happened and getting the full details is so important. Understanding what happened and why things happened, and that's why I want to do this podcast again, to make sure we had a solid recording of everything. So we put this on record. So please join us next time. We're heading out in that. We'll see you later.